This is the Doing Scary Things podcast. I'm Katie. I'm a veteran photographer, a serial entrepreneur, an aspiring author, and a relentless optimist. I'm a slow-talking, deep thinker from the Appalachian Mountains.
I'm Anna. I'm a prodigal musician, an accidental psychotherapist, and I'm living life mostly by experiment and endless curiosity. I'm a redheaded speed talker from a Midwestern farm town.
The purpose of this podcast is to talk to people who are doing some pretty scary things in their life about what it takes for them to push past fear and keep themselves going every day.
We'll also unpack the vulnerable things we're pursuing in our own lives and hopefully offer encouragement to you wherever you are on your journey.
Man, that was brilliant.
Hey everybody, we're so excited to share with you today our very first interview on the podcast. Today we're doing Scary Things with WILKES. You may recognize him if you saw season 14 of The Voice this past spring in 2018, but there's a whole lot more to WILKES than his time on TV. WILKES is a Georgia-based country music artist and Nashville songwriter who's faced many a scary thing in his multi-genre music career so far. Stick around for a really fun interview with WILKES, including a couple of songs from his latest release.
That's love. It's love rolling down the road in a 17-year-old Corolla with a dent in the door, windows down on the way to the store. It's coupons that you gotta cut out, checking every day on the checking account, praying everything's gonna work out, and it always does. Yeah, we're broke, but we're happy, you know. If you ask me, we ain't doing too shabby. It's the good stuff that you can't buy. It's a red box on a Friday night on an old couch when you got a buck. Baby, ain't it good to be us? It's a grilled cheese and tomato. It's I love you, baby, see you later. Some days are gold and some days are a bust, but ain't it good to be us? Ain't it good to be us? Yeah. It's love walking down the street, sharing a Coke, sharing a dream, pointing out how it's gonna be. White brick house and a front porch swing. These days that we're living, someday we're gonna be wishing that we were right back here still in them. Cause it's the good stuff that you can't buy. It's a red box on a Friday night on an old couch when you got a buck. Baby, ain't it good to be us? It's a grilled cheese and tomato. It's I love you, baby, see you later. Some days are gold and some days are a bust, but ain't it good to be us? Yeah. We ain't got it all, but we got enough. We'd be rich for real if we could bottle what we have. It's the good stuff that you can't buy. It's a red box on a Friday night on an old couch when you got a buck. Baby, ain't it good to be us? It's the good stuff that you can't buy. It's a red box on a Friday night on an old couch with our favorite pup. Baby, ain't it good? It's a grilled cheese and tomato. It's a finding out what you're made of. Some days are gold and some days are a bust, but ain't it good to be
Jason Wilkes, would you please introduce yourself to us? Or really, not to us, but to everyone else, because we know you.
Do you want me to introduce myself or as the name that I go by when I do music stuff?
Well, that's a great question because
I have found there is a distinction.
There is, and I certainly think of you as two separate people in my head. So,
yeah, well, that's why there's two separate things, because it's two separate people.
Why don't you just do both, and then we can pick one, or leave them both in?
All right, that'll work. I'll just combine them in whatever comes out of my mouth.
Okay, perfect. Sounds fun.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is WILKES, except for actually my first name is Jason, but I go by my last name because I'm different when I do artist stuff. So I'm WILKES.
Nice.
It came out.
What's that like, though? I mean, I think that would be interesting to talk about. Like, what is it like having to do that? How did you make that decision to go by your last name, and what has that brought about?
It started because I was in bands for so long, as y'all specifically know, especially Anna, considering she's married to the bass player of the main one. But because I was in bands for so long, when I started doing stuff by myself and started saying both of my names out loud, it just felt stupid. And I didn't like it. But just going by my last name feels more like a band. And from the outside, if you don't know what's going on, you think at first it's probably a band. You don't think it's a guy. Then later on you find out it's just me. But that's part of it, and that's where it started. But one reason we stuck with it so hardcore is because people have to distinguish. They have to get used to distinguishing between Wilkes and Jason, because I don't want it to sound like one of those stupid like things that all artists do, like the Beyonce and what's Beyonce's other Sasha Fierce.
Jason Fierce.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not a Jason Fierce weird thing. It's just literally Jason feels uncomfortable a lot in the situations that Wilkes might not. But there's a trigger in my head that flips that when I'm being Wilkes, it feels different and I'm more comfortable in that space as opposed to trying to represent myself as just a musician. It's weird. It's rooted somewhere in the band thing. When I would be sitting with the band and they would say, "This is High Flight Society," I could easily speak as the front man. But when they said, "This is Jason from High Flight Society," I'd be like, "Oh," and I felt weird because they weren't included.
Yeah, very cool.
I think that's a really powerful thing, and a lot of people do that. The psychology of that's really interesting because it's like, yeah, maybe not going so far as to be Sasha Fierce, but it is like a persona, and it sort of gives you permission and protection to do like a little bit more risky things than just you yourself with everything that entails. So I think it's cool that you've embraced that. I like to tease you about it also.
Yep. Yep. I take the teasing from people that knew me before I was doing the separation. But if you didn't, you're not allowed to tease me.
Right.
Punch in
You're
the
like,
face.
Jason who? What are you talking about?
Exactly. It's like it never happened.
So you are a musician. You have been in several bands. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and maybe what you've been up to this year? Anything interesting?
Nothing at all. No. I was, first, I was in a band called High Flight Society, which Anna is married to John, who is the bass player, who is the brother of the lead guitar player. So it was kind of a family thing, I guess. But so I was the lead singer, rhythm guitar player of High Flight Society for 12 years or so. And that was spent entirely hustling, not making money, playing music, but mostly hustling and trying to figure out what the heck we were doing. Then I was in a band called Disciple for around 3 years as the bass player. Ended up leaving that band after a little less than 3 years because of family stuff, actually, because I was gone too much for my daughter at the time and my wife, and it just wasn't a healthy life decision to be gone that much. After that, I moved on into doing stuff by myself, which is when I started feeling uncomfortable as both of my names, which is when I started going by Wilkes to feel more comfortable with the whole situation. Some point in there, I got a call from The Voice, which I thought was fake. Turned out it was real.
The call or the voice?
Both. No, I thought the call from The Voice was fake. But actually, there was some speculation on if I thought the show was fake or not, too, which has been settled, and I don't think it's fake. Also, it turns out the call wasn't fake. So I went to do The Voice, and that was super cool. That was over. Yeah, it debuted in like February. So it's been a couple months since it went off the air at this point. But so that was an unexpected roller coaster that I jumped on and then jumped out of. So now I'm post bands, post Voice, and doing things and figuring out things again.
What's that been like? What are you figuring out?
Everything. Even the things that I'd already figured out. I'm refiguring and figuring them out. So I found out one thing about the music industry is you figure it out and then you realize you were wrong. And then you figure it out again. And then you realize you're wrong again. And then you realize there's no figuring it out. You're just in a constant state of figuring out what the heck's going on. So I play music, but mostly I'm being a musical scientist trying to figure out how to make the right music and put it out the right way and trigger the right algorithms and all of those things.
So many facets.
I love it.
Facet. When you say facet, I picture a faucet.
That's what I was thinking of. It's like a faucet.
Multifaceted.
Exactly. I picture somebody calling a faucet the wrong word, and I'm correcting them saying, no, that's not a facet.
So was the voice, I think that's really helpful to me personally, that whole idea of like, oh yeah, figure it out. Refigure it out. Oh, forever figure it out. But when the voice sort of showed up, it was very consuming, right? Like consuming of your time and your bandwidth and your mental energy and stuff. And I mean, you were physically on a different location for a lot of that. And so that kind of interrupted whatever it was you were figuring out at that time. So coming back from the voice, did you sort of have a semblance of like, I need to pick back up where I left off? Or was it just kind of like ground zero again?
I kind of just scrapped the whole thing as soon as I went on the show, because I knew it would change everything. Not how most people think. If you go on The Voice or American Idol, you become a superstar and you don't ever have to do anything again. That's not true for anybody. Nowhere close. But it does change how everything operates and how people react to you and stuff. As soon as I decided to do The Voice, we semi-scrapped the plan and then immediately drafted a plan that was voice-related, and then immediately drafted a post-voice plan to basically try and take full advantage of any circumstance that I was in or would find myself in because of the show. So now I'm in the post-voice stage, which I had thought about and kind of geared up to before I was ever even on the show. And I'd say I'd got it like 75% right, I think. I was off on a lot of things, but yeah, it was definitely a wrench in the gears in a good way, but kind of derailed anything I had going at the time, even like simple stuff like writing sessions that I needed to go to in Nashville. I had to cancel writing sessions just to leave Georgia and go somewhere else. It definitely kind of halted my life, and then at the same time skyrocketed my life in a different direction. It's a very strange kind of juxtaposition. It was good though. That was part of the whole figuring things out. I'd actually, funny story, figured out early in life that one thing I knew I had figured out about the music industry is that singing shows were stupid and you should never do them, and that it was not a way to make it. And then years later, I found myself on a singing show and realized I hadn't actually figured that out. So it's not the first time I've done something in the music industry I said I would never do because it was a bad idea, because I later found out I was wrong and that it was a good idea.
Yeah, that's going to be like your autobiography. Stuff I said or thought I would never actually do in the music industry.
It's going to be called When Bad Ideas Become Great Ideas.
No, it's so true, though. That's something we talk about all the time. There's a million ways to do it. And like, how do you pick? It's like, I just feel like it's like walking around in the dark and just like stumbling. And it's like, well, I guess I could try it this way. And then if that doesn't work, like I'll try it another way. You know, that's kind of how the music industry feels to me. But I saw Chelsea, your wife, who's amazing, a couple weeks ago. And, you know, we were kind of just catching up. And she said, I just keep telling him one day we're going to look at each other and say it worked. Yeah. And I love it because I totally relate to that, but I totally get that of like doing whatever you have to do, right? And then just waiting for it to work.
Yes, exactly. And we say all the time, I think one of our biggest speculations is it working?
Yeah.
Constantly, like we know eventually it's going to work, but don't really know if it's working.
Yeah.
Right.
Something's going to work.
Yeah. And you can always tell there's like a feeling that comes, a kind of an intangible feeling that it is working, even though sometimes there's not proof of it.
Yeah.
Even with pretty much every step I've ever made in the music industry has been based on a not tangible feeling. For me, like joining Disciple, for instance, as a bass player in a hard rock band, didn't make really career sense necessarily. If you would have been an advisor for me to try to make a good business decision, probably not a fantastic decision on the surface, but to me, it felt like the best possible decision at the time, and it ended up being exactly what I needed to do for the time that I did it. And then the voice was the same thing. I didn't really want to do it at first, or didn't want to do it at all at first, and then it ended up being the right thing. But there was nothing ever that happened that I was like, okay, now I feel good about it. It was like, okay, I still feel crappy about this. But I kind of have this intangible little tickling, like inkling of a feeling that it's right, so I'm going to do it.
It's a lot of surprise and then kind of far out hindsight.
Yeah, exactly.
That reminds me of something that we heard from a great other interviewee that we had. She said, like, instead of figure it out, feel it out. I think that can be taken very, very surface level, but I mean, I know what you're talking about too. Like, there is that very inner knowing internal experience that kind of seems more trustworthy than the data or the feedback sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Or the total lack of feedback that you often get in the music industry, I'm sure.
Yeah. The feedback you get in the music industry either comes from the music industry, who always tells you you're doing it wrong, or from your friends who always tells you you're the best thing since sliced bread, and neither one of them is correct. So
I
you're
hope
not.
so if they're your friends. Otherwise, get some new friends.
Yep. I have some few friends that I won't let them tell me everything is amazing. They're kind of my barometer a little bit. Chelsea actually does that for me. She's one of my barometers. Yeah, it's weird being any sort of creative type, whatever, fill in the blank person. You kind of have to rely on your own, like, instinct. And it's that intangible kind of thing. I don't know. That's whatever the feeling is. Yeah, I totally ride on that and make all of my decisions based on that. I don't make hardly any decisions based on fact, which is scary when I say that out loud.
And to go back to what you were saying about, just reevaluating along the way. I mean, I think any kind of business advice would say that's a good thing, right? Like, you've got to be, I'm trying to think of like other businesses that aren't in an artistic realm, even like, they're going to be telling you, like, look at your numbers, like, how are you performing? Like, you're going to have to, reevaluate and make changes. So, I mean, I think it's certainly relatable.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like, you are so used to that whole model of having to constantly evaluate and adjust and incorporate feedback.
Yeah, but people don't necessarily think of that when they think of an artistic career, right? Like, you're just going to be a rock star and...
Yeah. Being some sort of artist versus business plans, though, is what you view as like monetary gain. Is when you're looking at any sort of business, the thing you're looking at success-wise is money. And that's not what you look at as a musician or any sort of air quotes profession where money is that hard to make. For instance, this is like complete black and white facts that the high flight guys probably wouldn't want me to tell people, but I'm telling people anyways, because I have before, and it's fine. But I was in high flight society for 12 years. The biggest check I got in that band for an entire year, granted, it wasn't a check like all at once, little trickles of money that ended up being a sum of just over $2,000 in a year over a 12-year career. And we had like a major record label deal, 2 independent label deals. We had records in stores and like on the featured displays in Target and Walmart and all the things you think you want to do. But the max I made in a year in that 12-year time period was $2,000.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of people who had my best interest in mind would tell me that what I was doing was more like a hobby, not a profession. And I was like, no, what I'm doing is like medical school.
Right.
Medical school, you go a long time. You pay a crap load of money. You actually lose money. I'm making money to go to medical school for like rock music, basically. So without being in high flight society and not making any money for 12 years, I would have been a complete doofus musically at this point. But anybody that has any respect for me whatsoever in the music industry, whether it's my publisher or people I write with or other artists, when they ask me why I know how to do so many facets of like producing and mixing and performing and playing all the different instruments that I play and just understanding background vocals versus lead vocals and all this stuff, it's literally because I was in a band for 12 years and we toured and hustled like crazy and didn't make any money. And because we didn't make any money, our drive was harder than anybody else because we had a goal we had to meet immediately. And we always felt that strain of wanting to meet it, but we never met it. But we operated like we were about to meet it the next week for 12 years.
Yeah.
So going back to the point, a business person would be like, horrible decision. But a musician is like, wow, I wish I could go to that school of music so I could learn all those things. But the only way to get the schooling that I've got was in that band for that amount of time. And that's the cool thing about music, because there's so many different schools you can attend. You just kind of realize what school you're in currently and take advantage of it.
Right. And are you going to go to school as a hobby nights and weekends, or are you going to go to med school for 10 years?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that analogy. I can't get enough of that because we respect professions so much and consider them automatically valid with things like that, like law school, med school, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you're literally doing the same thing, except actually you're not going into a whole bunch of debt for it, which I think is better.
You might be.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but you didn't.
Oh, yeah. If we looked at our numbers accurately, that $2,000 I made in that year probably was not profit.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
If you think about gear
we probably,
and gas and...
Yeah, we actually went in debt, but yeah, not like... I've had conversations with people, either friends of mine that have gone through college or in college or whatever, and older, more wise people that I try to gain any sort of wisdom from. I've kind of milked these conversations, and it always comes to a point for my side of the story musically where people are like, well, what are you going to do as a backup plan? Or how do you do this and that and about money and all these things you're supposed to think about? And for the people that are in med school, I'm like, why are you going to med school? That's a long time and a lot of money. And they're like, well, because I want to help people and I want to do this and I'm going to make a lot of money after this and this is the goal. And I'm like, to me, that sounds awful and like a terrible decision. Because for me personally, I would hate that. For you, touring for as long as I have for no money seems like a horrible decision because you're not me and you would hate that. But we're doing the same thing. You're going in massive debt to make lots of money. I'm not making money in order to possibly not make money or possibly make money. Either way, we have goals that we're working towards. And for me, it makes sense. Outside, it obviously does not to a lot of people, but I think it's working.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. No,
we'll see.
I love that. I think that's a super powerful, kind of insight into the life of a musician. And obviously this doesn't count for everybody, but I think musicians that are out there hustling are some of the absolutely hardest working people I know. And, don't necessarily get the credit for it, But yeah, it is a brutal industry. I was thinking while you're talking about High Flight Society, I was thinking, and that was probably back when people bought CDs. It's like people don't even have CD players anymore.
If High Flight was existing now, I think because of our resilience and our determination, we would have lasted 12 years again, but it would have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't want to see what our career would look like at this point. If we were just starting, it would be depressing.
Yeah.
But
it is a good point though. It's like when somebody's borrowing all that money to go to school, you at least know you kind of have a date on your calendar, right? Okay, well this day at least I get a job, hopefully, or I get a paycheck or something. And so it's something to kind of plan around. In music or in other kind of artistic fields like that, you don't know. You're just, like you said, you're out there acting like your big break's coming tomorrow for 12 years. You have no idea, no control over it. What's that been like?
I kind of ignore that part. I don't know if that's healthy or not, but if I ever start thinking about that. I've downward spiraled more than once in my life and tried to quit music completely. Luckily, Chelsea's been the one that hasn't let me do it. But that's the thought that makes me spiral into wanting to quit, just because there's an immense amount of uncertainty. But one of the things that balances it for me is I have known people that have paid all this money and gone to school to do stuff, and then they get to the end of it, and some of the same people that are like, what's your backup plan for retirement? What's your backup plan for this and that? I'm like, what's your backup plan if you hate what you're doing?
Yeah.
And I've had some people, I know some people that have went through it, and they've got there and been like, well, crap, I don't want to be a doctor. Turns out I spent a lot of money. And so it's like,
Yeah.
it's a weird thought for me, because that also could happen in music. You could devote 15 years of your life to music. The difference is, looking back at it, you can either think, well, I had these great aspirations and I became a doctor. I just didn't like it. Or I became a failure of a musician and turned out I didn't like it. Like, those are two very different things. But if you go down that rabbit hole too much and think too far out, you can just, I don't know, for me personally, it's just dangerous, because the what if of anything just gets discouraging and impacts the opposite side of the what if. There's the what if I fail, but there's what if I succeed. But if I concentrate too much on the what if I fail, it undermines the possibility of the what if I succeed. Thinking about failing can actually keep you from succeeding. So I try not to think about the what if I blow this portion. But at the end of the day, like, you're going to get old and you're going to die. You can either be happy or worried or freaked out about your job or not job. Either way, we're all going to get there, and it's all going to end at some point. If you die with $1 million as a doctor, or you die with $30,000 a year and a broke musician, either way, if you like being a doctor, that's great. And if you like being a musician, that's great. I wouldn't like being a doctor. So I don't want to die with $1 million and a doctorate. I'd rather die as a broke musician.
I love that.
I don't want to, but I would rather, but I don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a game of Would You Rather.
Would you rather?
Exactly. I suck at that game, by the way, because
I think you just won that round, but, you know.
No, there you go. Well, that's checkmate on Would You Rather, because usually I suck at that game because I don't like decisions.
Yeah.
So
I'm not sure that you outright said this, but you're spending your life right now asking yourself, or asking Chelsea, you know, is this working? Is it working? But meanwhile, like, you're doing it. The risk is there, and you deal with the risk, and you kind of bear that burden, and you ask those questions. But that's all in the context of actually doing this thing that you feel like is the best use of yourself, right?
yeah, and it depends on what your barometer is for is it working. Everything that I say when I talk about being a musician and going after your dreams and not thinking about it too much, and all the things that I try to encourage people with, you can go about it the exact way I said it and be doing it out of irresponsibility instead of like wisdom in the pursuit of something. You can just be doing it as a complete doofus. Like, if you're not built to do it and you're trying to accomplish it, that's a very bad decision. But if you're only wired to do it, it's the best decision you could possibly make. So the barometer for me is when Chelsea will say, is this working? If we were looking at our bank account most of the time, it's not like we have been very broke. We're not very broke currently. It's not necessarily completely thanks to me, but we're not very broke at this point. But we have looked at our bank account and could have been like, is this working? And I look at it and I'm like, no, it is not working. But when she asks me that question, she's not asking it from a point of monetary gain. Mm-hmm. She's asking me just in a general sense. So my barometer is, where am I at gifting wise in comparison to where I was? Like, am I still the lead singer of High Flight, or am I better than what the lead singer of High Flight was? Or, like, if we set all these like giant goals of like Michael Jackson and Prince and Adele and all these people, if I'm not getting closer to Michael Jackson and Prince and Adele, then it's not working. But if I'm, by the way, in no way saying that I'm anywhere near them.
No, you're saying you're on your way.
Yes, if I'm not encroaching on the direction of Michael Jackson and Prince and Adele, that's the barometer for me. If I can look back and say, my songs this year are dramatically better than last year, all of the response people give me is dramatically better. If it's climbing up in some fashion, then it's working. And it's kind of keeping your head on straight of what the barometer is, but also making sure there is one. I know musician friends and other creative people that do stuff and they just don't have a barometer. And they're just like, man, I'm just doing it, man. And I'm like, cool. What are you doing? They're like, man, I just want to play guitar and just play and just write songs. I'm like, cool. How much do you practice? They're like, man, I'm just like doing the thing. I'm like, cool. Do you have a job to fund the beginning of your pursuit? No, I'm just doing it. Like you can't do that. You got to scale it against something, but you don't want to scale it against the wrong things.
And that's kind of why I made the clarification earlier, a hard-working musician. Because, we've all seen that. We've all seen that, and it can give other musicians a bad rap, for sure. Like, if that's people's interpretation of what musicians act like, but I think we've all seen the inside of that to know, like, most people are out there, pounding the pavement. But yeah, it kind of all depends on your definition of success. Like you were saying, if you're looking at money, if you're looking at your bank account, if you're, we could talk about, the Princeton study that found that people that make over $70,000, we're not even talking about millions of dollars, but $70,000, your happiness doesn't even increase after that amount of money, So what we talk about a lot on the podcast is doing the things that you're going to be proud of when you are old. Like you were saying, like how did you spend your days? And if you were able to spend your life doing things that you're passionate about and you somehow paid your bills in the meantime, to me, that's success.
Yeah, that's a win.
Totally.
Yeah. For me, I don't consider the financial aspect of it much. However, I consider it a lot more than I used to. Another thing that musicians do that gives a lot of musicians a bad rap is not only do a lot of us not work hard, but we operate out of just whimsical, not thought out, just stupid decisions. And I was having a conversation with my manager the other day. We had to make a really crappy decision to do something that we didn't want to do that involved the show. And we had to basically back out of a show, and I didn't want to do it, but we had to. Business-wise, we just had to. And being 18 years into my career now, I was trying to justify not doing it to myself, but what I came to the conclusion of is High Flight Jason, which is the barometer, High Flight Jason versus WILKES. WILKES is a trying to be established professional musician. High Flight Jason was a dumb young guy trying to sing and play guitar for a living. And those guys make bad decisions, but the guy that I am now makes hard decisions. Most musicians make bad, not thought out, just stupid decisions. But when you grow up as a musician, you can make tough decisions for your career, whether that involves money or whatever, regardless of what it is. You have to get better at making the hard decisions. And at some point, you do have to start thinking about finances, but you also don't want to live there because it is the music industry. So like now I don't play shows for free to 100 people like High Flight used to, just because we wanted people to hear our music. Just because if I did, I wouldn't be able to play music for very long. And my family couldn't benefit at all from that. And I would be working at Walmart within 6 months. Being a musician's hard. Yeah, basically.
It is. Well, and as somebody who manages another band who also doesn't play free shows, I thank you, because, and it's just like, we both kind of have a background in photography, but it's the same idea. It's like, if there's people out there doing free shoots, then nobody wants to pay for a shoot. And if musicians are so undervaluing themselves that they'll just go and play for free, then it tells people that music isn't worth anything, and that's just not the case. So, yeah. Okay. So we've kind of talked a lot about like your thoughts about the music industry, but tell us about your music and what's going on with Wilkes right now.
Currently, I have an EP that is self-titled that came out a few weeks ago, which is 4 songs, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 songs and a cover. I think that's right. So, anyways, I suck at remembering things. But so I released the EP. It has some original songs on it and one cover by No Doubt, "Don't Speak," which has a whole funny story to it. But so that came out and it's been doing actually better than we thought it would. Not that we thought it would do bad. I think I'm just, because of my early High Flight years, I'm just geared to watch things suck when you put them out and nobody care about it. So now people care and I'm like, whoa, cool. People are listening to music. But so I have that. And then the thing we're doing currently is we're playing this new game in the music industry, which is the game of constantly being there and constantly having something out, because people's attention spans are insane these days. So every 4 to 6 weeks, we're releasing something. So it's not necessarily new original songs or new to people original songs, but maybe acoustic versions of the songs that are already on there, live versions, remixes, random weird covers. One of the things we're about to put out is, I don't know which song yet, but I'm going to do vocals only releases of the songs, where I literally just mute everything except the vocals and put that on Spotify, which is kind of weird, but I think it'd be cool, because I always bury tons and tons of background vocals that are just put in there for feelers and space. But I'm going to bring them up to where it's basically like a Gaither vocal band version of each of the songs. So it's basically going to be weird things like that, to where every 4 to 6 weeks, something will pop up on Spotify and Apple Music and iTunes and Amazon and YouTube and all the things. That'll be, if it's not new music, like new songs, it'll be something. So basically we're running the gauntlet of content right now.
Awesome. Well, if it's not weird, I'm going to be disappointed. But
I'll make sure and I'll put something really weird in there.
Perfect.
For you. I'll do an inward singing version of the album where I only sing the whole thing by breathing in.
Can you give us a
Love
little
it.
taste
Yeah.
of that?
Go ahead.
No, I can't.
No sneak peeks. Well, can you tell us the funny story about the No Doubt cover?
Yes. Funny story about the No Doubt cover is, when I was on The Voice, not just when I was on The Voice, in general, I suck at playing cover songs, because anytime I want to cover anything, I find out it's either too obscure or too old and not cool anymore, or like I'm not good at picking the songs that all these YouTubers that are blowing up so much by picking a song that just released last week and covering it and they blow up. Like I can't do that. I can't just cover a song for the sake of covering it. I have to have some sort of connection with it. So when I was on The Voice, picking those songs was like pulling teeth, because they would suggest something and I would suggest something, and they didn't like what I liked, and I didn't want to do what they liked, and what I suggested wasn't popular enough, or like all things that, by the way, I'm not bashing the show for not liking my songs, because
Sure.
I agree with them, because I don't want to go on national TV and sing a song that's an album cut from 1992. But when I suggested Don't Speak by No Doubt, basically it was because I was in the hotel playing through stuff and thinking of bands that I liked from back when I got inspired by music, and No Doubt came up, and I was like, oh, Blake Shelton dates the lead singer, so this might be a cool move, and it would be kind of funny. Let me just try it. And I suggested it to them, and they really liked it. And then I kind of freaked out for a second, because I didn't think I could actually do a cool version of it.
You were wrong.
But it ended up working. So whipped it up right quick, and then there was a giant debacle on the stage. It's a lot longer story than I anticipated, but cut to the chase. When I was finally performing the song on there, I don't want to blame it on the microphone stand guy, but I will blame it on him a little bit. The little thing on the microphone stand where you tighten it up so it doesn't fall wasn't completely tight. And I had my hands on the stand the whole time. And on the big note, I was going to be dramatic and put my hands up in the air, which is super uncomfortable for me because I'm introverted anyways. And the mic plummeted to the ground. So I plummeted to the ground with it. And luckily it made a moment, and it was cool. But the good thing about it is, long story short, mic stand guy didn't tighten it, and everybody liked what happened. And it was on an episode where the voice didn't record the songs. So I got to record it myself afterwards.
Nice.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So
Plus, as a bonus, all your friends and family back home got to have mini heart attacks. So
oh yeah.
that was good.
My mom and my wife and my dad and my daughter were all in the audience when it happened. And I guess it translated differently there because they didn't realize what had happened. I guess what the camera angle on TV was zoomed in on me, so I kind of just disappeared.
Yep.
So it obviously looked like something happened, but they didn't even know. They thought that I just dropped to the ground because it didn't look as dramatized in person, I guess.
Yeah.
My favorite part, just for me personally, so right after that happened, I could just tell, I mean, this was my interpretation. You looked not just like pissed, but like, oh crap, like I just screwed that up or like whatever.
Mortified.
And then immediately all the judges are just like on their feet praising you, like all this stuff. And it was just like a little bit like the disappointment faded, you know, because it was like, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was maybe.
That look was two things. The one thing was when you've been performing as long as I have, you don't consciously do things on stage. You'd literally half the time are thinking about something else, and then the show is over and you're like, wow, I was trying to remember how to do long division that whole time. And not only do I not remember long division, but I also don't remember the show. Like, that's how it works. And basically the song ended and I was on the floor and I kind of looked up, and then it was like my whole life flashed before my eyes thing, except it started at the beginning of the performance. So it flashed back before my eyes and I realized what had happened, and I was like, oh shoot, the mic dropped. And then I don't really necessarily know what happened. And then I realized that it dropped during the high note. And when you're on The Voice, you have to have like a money note in all the songs. Right. And that was my money note. And it was a pivotal point in the show. And basically I stood up and thought my money note got taken away. They didn't hear the high note. And then I saw him standing up and I was like, oh, maybe they liked it anyways. So turns out it was good, and I got to reveal the money note on the recording, I guess. But yeah, that was a look of slight panic because I realized what had happened all in 2 seconds. I didn't live it while it was happening.
Like, I must have caught the microphone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reliving it as they were telling me what was happening. I was like, that happened? That's cool.
You and me, we used to be together every day together, always. I really feel like I'm losing my best friend. I can't believe that this could be the end. It looks as though you're letting go, and if it's real, gotta stop pretending who we are. You and me, I can see us dying our way. Don't speak, I know just what you're saying, so please stop explaining. Don't tell me 'cause it hurts. Don't speak, I know what you're thinking, and I don't need your reasons. Don't tell me 'cause it hurts. Hush, hush, darling. Hush, hush, darling. Hush, hush, don't tell me 'cause it hurts. Hush, hush, darling. Hush, hush, darling. Hush, hush, don't tell me 'cause it hurts. Hush, hush, darling. Hush, hush, darling. Hush, hush, don't tell me 'cause it hurts.
Well, we talked a lot about like the challenges of the music industry. What would you say are some of the most rewarding things you've experienced from 18 years at this point?
The most rewarding thing for me, hands down, is the pin drop moment that can happen at shows. I know a lot of people go the route of, if my music could just impact one person, I would be totally happy. And I'm sitting there like, you don't think that, you idiot. If you did, you wouldn't be trying to play to a million people at one time. Like, you want your music to impact a lot more than one person. So, by the way, I'm not a douchebag. I just made myself sound like a complete goober. But you know what I mean. If you're a musician, you know what I meant just now. My thing is, when I'm at a show and I do something, whether it be a song ends and it's a real impactful moment, or my personal favorite is when it's just when I do a song with just me and an acoustic and there's a pin drop moment, and it's not because people are disengaged or not paying attention, but it's because they're so engaged that you just don't really have a reaction. That's the most rewarding thing to me, is the non-reactive reaction, as opposed to the immediate uproar of applause. I like the silence, which is kind of what happened a little bit at that instance on The Voice. Was the music, I already had it where the music would build up super dramatic and drop down to just me and a vocal. But during the just me and a vocal part, because of what had just happened, there was literally, in that sound stage, there wasn't any sound happening anywhere. Like, all the camera guys stopped walking. Judges kind of put their hands on the desk. That's kind of what I live for, is to make people not react. So react in such a way that it appears as no reaction whatsoever. That's my goal in every aspect. I just have to figure out how to get that onto a record. I haven't figured that out yet. I will, but I haven't.
You're really good at that in person for sure.
If you have any ideas of
Not so much
how
on
to
the Skype
get it on a
call,
recording.
Right.
but in person.
Yeah.
Yeah, in person.
It's so true, though. I mean, if people were disengaged, they'd probably just be talking, right?
Yeah. Or like
Yeah,
fidgeting
exactly.
around and shuffling. I mean, I was just thinking that your CD release show was a few weeks ago, and I had the privilege of being there, and it was crammed in like sardines people. And there was definitely at least one moment like that. And it was incredible how silent a room crammed full of that many people could be. You know, like that doesn't just happen by chance.
And for me, those are very calculated, because I realized a while back how much I like those moments. So I build sets into those moments so that it can get there in a way that makes the most sense and encourage that type of moment to happen. But yeah, if I could figure out how to make that happen in every aspect of life in some fashion, that would be
So you're saying if everyone
perfect.
would just shut up, would be.
Don't say anything. That's probably why I like it so much. Introverted me is like, I need you guys to just shut up for a minute. So I'm going to play this song and just make it be quiet. Give me a break. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know.
I think we just cheapened it.
Totally cheapened it.
But I do,
Oh, well.
the irony of the song title is not lost on me either. Don't speak, right?
Exactly. Don't speak, please.
Ever. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yep.
Awesome.
Can I ask a question?
You ask.
So I'm curious, Jason Wilkes and Wilkes. I'm asking you both.
Okay. Yeah, you have to specify which one you're asking.
Well, I'm asking you both, given all this rich experience and dedication to this path that you've had, what's really scaring you the most right now?
Spiders. Not really.
Same.
My house has a lot of spiders. I've actually grown not to be very scared of them because Chelsea is so scared of them that I have to get rid of them all the time, so they don't bother me anymore. But, so what are we talking about? I just blew it. What's actually scaring me? Okay.
Picture of a rattlesnake right outside your door. That's pretty scary.
Oh yeah, we found a timber rattler outside my studio the other day. That was pretty scary. I put snake away everywhere. It was literally sitting by a little packet that says snake away on it.
Wow.
It's like he was looking at me like, you see that packet? I'm not scared of that. I'm just gonna.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he was doing. He was giving me the middle finger with his rattler.
Yeah.
But
Giving you the old rattler.
exactly. Maybe that's what it actually means when they rattle. They're not scared. They're just giving you middle finger. I'm about to bite you and possibly kill you. Anyways, he's gone. I don't know where he went.
Oh, you don't know where he went?
No,
he's in your bedroom right now.
Maybe.
No, don't say that. Just
I mean,
realized
it's
what you
possible,
said.
I guess.
Oh, man.
That's another funny story related to the voice and being scared of things is you have to take these personality tests and things, or it's not, you take an IQ test, some sort of personality test, and this other dramatic test where you meet with like a psychologist and stuff at the beginning so that they can basically, I think it's so they can know what they're getting into, basically just being like, you've made it far enough for us to make sure you're not bona fide crazy. And I met with my psychiatrist person for them to go over stuff, and she was asking me questions just to make sure that, like, if I don't win the show, if you don't win, are you going to be okay with that? And if this happens, are you going to be, like, making sure it's not going to ruin my life and that it's good for me to do, which is awesome that the show takes those kinds of, that has those kind of standards. But she started asking me all these questions about losing and dealing with stuff, and I was starting to wonder, like, I wonder if she asked all these specific questions to everybody. And then she said later on, the reason she was asking me those questions is because on my test thing, I didn't score high on anything that they would consider a trigger, like addictive personalities or anger or any of those kind of things. But the thing that I scored high on was fear. And she said that according to my chart, I was very fearful. And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, you're apparently much more fearful than the average person. And makes sense because all growing up until I got married, I slept with the overhead light on in my bedroom. Not because I was sitting there thinking I'm terrified, but just because in my mind I thought if something happens in here, I want to see it. Because I was born with eyes to see in the daytime. So if I wake up and somebody's here, I want to see them. So I was sleeping with my light on. And that was rooted in me basically being scared of the dark growing up. And it just translated into this weird way of dealing with it, was telling myself I just wanted to see what was there. Was actually I just didn't want to have the light off. So there was that. And then like just all these little things growing up that I kind of flashed back to realize like, oh, I guess I am fearful of stuff. And then I guess rooted in my extreme introvertness is I don't like being around tons of people at one time, and I don't like engaging in a conflictive type of way or one-on-one with people about certain things is strange to me, and it literally like freaks me out. It's the same feeling that people get when they watch like a horror movie, like that you get like a rush of blood and your heart beats fast and you just don't want to deal with it. That's the feeling that I get. And I realized at The Voice during that meeting that I was basically scared of people, and which is stupid because I was the front man of a rock band for 12 years.
Fair, though. Fear isn't usually super rational, so.
No, it's not. It's not rational at all. But that's one thing that made me, going back to the Jason versus the Wilkes thing, is when I'm operating as Wilkes, just meaning I'm playing music, I'm a musician, and people are looking at me because they want to hear my music and be entertained. I'm okay with that. I'm just not okay with them looking at me for anything else. So in that room, I was basically like, well, I go by my last name. And in this case, I'm fine with this. And her being a psychiatrist was like, okay. That might be, she was probably thinking that might be another issue, but this is good enough for now.
She was thinking, okay, so can we start over and can I give Wilkes the MMPI?
Yeah, exactly. Which is funny because I've actually taken the personality test of, what's the one with the letters?
Myers-Briggs.
I guess that sounds right. Sounds strange, which is that test. But I've taken that test a number of times and I get different letters almost every time. So I guess it depends who I'm taking it as. But it's basically in a nutshell, because in reference to all that, whatever I'm scared of, I'm kind of unaware at this point of what I'm fearful of, because I've kind of been able to numb it a little bit and concentrate on other things. But just in general, doing what I do freaks me out. And it's like across the board. If I make a demo, there's part of me that doesn't want to turn it in because I think it sucks. Or if I record a record, there's part of me that doesn't want to put it out because it's not as good as Ed Sheeran's record. And it's not, I don't even, for one thing, it's probably an issue that I compare my record to Ed Sheeran and not somebody a little more tangible. But literally, when I go on stage, part of me doesn't want to go up there because I don't want people to reject what I'm doing, or I don't feel qualified, and it's all based in fear. But I found the hurdle to get over it is I've just separated performance me from actual me, and it's kind of a loophole that's probably not even tangible. But
so maybe rather than there's a specific thing that's the most scary to you right now, it's like there's sort of a category of, well, these are the things that scare Jason, but those are not the things that scare Wilkes, because Wilkes basically doesn't allow it.
Pretty much. Like I've had to just make the decision that it's just not okay to be freaked out by any of that stuff. And it's not one thing. It's my entire existence freaks me out. Like everything. Even like being a dad to my daughter is scary to me. But I think I do a pretty good job at it. But it's still, if I think about it too much, it freaks me out. And like letting Chelsea down freaks me out. If I didn't actively put my mind somewhere else, literally everything on planet Earth, I would be scared of it and I wouldn't come out of my bedroom. And I would even be scared to be in my bedroom by myself. Like I would just have to die to get over it. It's not like one specific thing, but I mean, if you consider everything to be a thing, then I guess there you go.
Yeah, well, I love that because you have found a way to do it anyway. And I think that is probably going to be really inspiring to a lot of people, but also probably really relatable. You know, maybe they're not out there on The Voice singing live for people or, you know, whatever. But like Anna said, fears aren't rational. And so, you know, it's like, yeah, there's always going to be stuff that scares us. And I think what isn't good is if we let that hold us back. back. So it's like if it's finding an alter ego, or if it's, whatever you've got to do to get out of bed every day and like do, be a parent, like be present in your life, like be a great spouse. Like, it's like, you can do it scared. We say that all the time. You can do it scared. And probably things worth doing are scary a lot of the times.
Yeah, and it sounds like all the examples you just gave are things that, because I know you, because we both know you, I think we'd agree, those are all things that are extremely important to you, and they're extremely meaningful. So it's like, if you have fear about something, that's almost a sign a lot of times that that's a really meaningful, important thing to you, because the built-in fear is, well, what if this goes away, or what if I screw this up, or whatever. And if it didn't matter to you, then you probably wouldn't have any fear about it. But Katie's exactly right. I mean, how can you do it anyway? How can you live with it and not let fear make your decisions for you? Like, you're letting Wilkes decide now instead of your fear.
Basically, choose Wilkes over fear. Make that into a coffee mug. Not a shirt, coffee mug.
Not a shirt.
Yeah, I knew somebody was going to go t-shirt, but I went coffee mug.
I was saying it.
Because coffee is more important than clothing.
That's also true.
We need to get John to design, like... Yeah. Wilkes, like, with a machine gun.
Yes.
Shooting at fear. I don't know.
Shooting at fear.
I'll let him decide.
That's been my life, has been shooting at fear with the imaginary machine gun of whatever I have in my arsenal at the time.
But you need, like, the coffee mug flying in the air from one hand to the other, like,
as fast as possible.
Yeah, no coffee spilling anywhere.
No.
All right, this has been awesome. Yeah. We haven't even talked about the fact that you produced a single for us.
Yes.
So how was that for you?
It was awful.
It was a while ago now.
Terrible.
Yeah, it was. It's been a minute. It was really cool because typically most of the time when I'm in the studio, I'm just doing whatever I want to do for myself, which is a fine place to be, just to do whatever you want, just for whatever you want it to sound like. But doing stuff for other people is always, it helps to, I guess, build up my skill level and my confidence level. And just overall, it's like doing music, but taking a break from music at the same time, because it's doing it in a different facet. But not faucet.
Now you're saying it all the
facet. I know. Yeah, I'm going to look up facet in the thesaurus in a second and find some different words. But it was cool because I got to still do my flavor of things, but with someone else in mind as opposed to just me. So it's, which I do that a lot in songwriting, but actual recording for something that's going to go on the internet and have somebody else's name on it. People can't listen to it and be like, oh, this sounds exactly like that Wilkes EP, except with a girl on it. Like, that's not the goal. So it was really good experience just for being able to help craft something that wasn't going to my usual destination. I was like, I got to take a different train track.
Yeah, totally. Do you do that, or were you at one time doing that a lot?
I did it a decent amount for a minute and then stopped doing it. And then I'm doing it more now with people, just from turning in demos to my publisher and releasing music and people finding out that I engineered and produced it myself. I have more people asking me to do their stuff. So I never made it like a super specific goal to do that, but I'm starting to make it one just to, it's I didn't really want to do it as much because I didn't want it to take away from the stuff that I do, but through doing that for y'all and then a couple other things that I did for some other people, I found out that it actually, like, it helps me to do the things that I do for myself for somebody else, just to kind of get off my rails for a minute, and it keeps me doing my own stuff a little more healthy.
Yeah, it's like a counterbalance, but it's still like honing those skills in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm not good at finding counterbalance outside of music. I've tried to do other things, like I did, like Katie referred to earlier. I had like a photography business for a minute and got decently good at it and then realized, well, this is not what I want to do. I should probably do music again. So to be able to find that counterbalance within music is cool and super important for me, I think.
Awesome. Well, we had a great time. We learned a ton.
Oh, yeah.
You were very nice to us. I was very much beginner. You.
Yeah, I think our hearts were puking the whole time.
It was fun.
Yeah, but it was. You took really good care of us, and you're a great vocal coach, so we appreciate you for that.
Thanks. That's my favorite part of doing that stuff is coaching vocals. Without the word coaching sounds a little strange to me, but the basic idea of vocal coaching, but just trying to get people to get cooler takes is the most fun thing to me.
Yeah.
Just encouraging different breathy sounds and different pronunciation of words and little things that people haven't realized yet work well for their voice, because I like watching people's light bulbs go off.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You're like, try this, and they're like, oh, I didn't know my voice sounded cool when I did that. It's really cool.
Case in point.
If I could ask one more question, what advice would you give to people who are maybe getting ready to take the first step, or, trying to figure out how to take the next step? What advice would you say to those people?
To give them all of the advice would take another podcast 3 times the length of this one. But the first thing I always try to tell people without sounding, I never want to be the Debbie Downer, like jaded music industry guy, but I do want to be the guy that says, before you do anything that's that dramatic of a life decision, possibly going to fail at a lot, and that everything we've talked about, make absolute sure before you do it that it's the only thing that you could see yourself doing. If you hold up music, you're like, I like music, I could be a musician. And you're like, but I also like archaeology, I could be an archaeologist. If those are equal, think really hard about which one you're going to do, because the music industry is this thing that, in my opinion, is built only for people who can't do anything else. And I don't mean like physically, because there's a lot of things that I can do that aren't music, but mentally and spiritually, I can't do anything other than music. So actually, there's a song that I have that I haven't released. I don't know if I ever will, but it's called Don't Get It. And the whole lyric, every lyric ends with, you just don't get it. And part of it is, if you don't lie awake, tossing, turning, because the fire's burning, you just don't get it. Like, if you literally aren't consumed with this, then you don't get it like we do. But if you do, don't do anything else. Like, devote yourself to the art of whatever you're doing. But if you're not built for it, it's just dangerous. I've seen people go after it 100% with good intentions, and then it ended up just being bad for them. So first and foremost, make sure. But if you are sure, after that point, don't doubt it at all. Because I've doubted it before and almost talked myself out of some really good things that have happened to me. So yeah, make sure it's you. Make sure it's 100%. You're in it, and there's nowhere else you can be. And then after you make that decision, don't try to unmake the decision. Just set some goals and go after them.
That's so good. That resonates so much with me, because I feel like a lot of times when people are trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do? Or I'm going to pursue this, or like, I could see myself doing that, or whatever, that's a lot of times a symptom of them not being honest with themselves about like what they're made to do. Like, I know what you're saying, and we definitely try to be really inclusive of everybody, but on a spiritual level, like if you're thinking about callings and like all that kind of stuff too, it's like a lot of times when people are trying to figure out what they're doing, it's running away from or not being honest about the thing that is actually there, Yeah. And we're definitely in the business of encouraging people to like fully embrace that thing that's actually there, even if it does scare them to death,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And this isn't a music podcast. It's whatever it is in you. Because I just kind of lean towards believing that everybody's got something in them like that. And I could be wrong, and I'm okay with being wrong. And I'm sure there's people that will disagree with me. But it's like, once you've experienced that feeling, I just have to believe that everybody has that about something. And like you're saying, like, yeah, if you're saying, well, I could do this and this would make money and I would be fine with it, we're not talking about life passion anymore. We're not talking about like what you're most passionate about. So
yeah.
Anyway.
And I've heard you say this before too, but just that thing of like, it's the thing that you can't not do. Like,
Yeah.
if you gotta do it, you gotta do it. Yeah.
I love it.
Yep. I've met a lot of people who I've had to have frank conversations with about being songwriters or musicians or whatever. And they're like, I just want to do this. I'm like, cool. Do you really? They're like, yeah. No, yeah, I think so. And I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah. You're like, you like
say,
the idea of it. You don't know what it's actually like.
You think it looks cool from the outside, but you don't really want to be on the inside. Like, why do you want to do it? Just, I would love to be on stage and just perform. How do you feel about dragging your face through a ditch?
Yeah.
That sounds awful. You don't want to do it. Or, yeah, I'm okay with that if it gets me on stage. Okay, cool. You're cut out for it. Like, go for it. And I think that's with anything. It's like, if I decided tomorrow, you know what? I could be a doctor. I think I'm going to do that. Back to the doctor reference. And then somebody says, you know how long it takes to go through school? I'd be like, never mind. I don't have that in me. I don't want to do that. That's because I'm not supposed to be a doctor. But people that are supposed to be a doctor, I'm like, you realize how long you went to school, how much money you spent? And they're like, absolutely, it was worth it. I'm like, you're crazy. It was not worth it. And they're like, yes, it was. Okay, cool. It was worth it for you.
Yeah. You're like, I'm glad you're my doctor.
Yeah, exactly. And that's across the board, like Katie was saying, I think regardless, if it's the thing or if it's not.
Yeah.
But it's never going to be the feeling that's on the front of your mind or the top of your heart or all these metaphorical places where things sit. Like people wear stuff on their sleeves and they keep things on the tip of their tongue and the front of their mind and they keep it deep in their heart. Like,
are we in a songwriting session now?
Yes,
I've never thought of all those things.
I know. This feeling doesn't sit anywhere in those. My calling to play music and inspire people with music and write songs that change people's lives and make people not say anything at concerts because they're moved so much. That's not on the tip of my tongue. It's not in the back of my mind. It's not on the front of my mind. It's not deep in my heart. It's like, I don't know where it is, but it's just this feeling that just kind of lingers. And that's how you know if it's it. It's almost like if you feel it too much, if it seems too good to be true because it's so heavy on you, that might not even be a good sign. It's like a inkling. It's literally like if you're married or have met your for sure significant other, there's that, it's kind of like a gut feeling to where you see your significant other. Like when I see my wife, I get the same feeling to where I'm like, that's it. Like that's her. I just know it. It's not because I get butterflies in my heart or whatever. It's just like a fact that lives somewhere inside of me. It's like the same thing. When people say, what do you do as a living? If I say I'm a musician, it's the same feeling when I say that. It's just like, I don't know where this fact comes from, but this is it.
I love what you said about, once you figure it out, don't doubt it. Just do it.
Yeah, because doubt is the thing that lives on the forefront of your mind, at the tip of your tongue, in the back of your head. Like, if you go to those places too much, that's where you start tripping up on stuff. You just gotta focus on that feeling that you can't find to be able to focus on it. So somehow focus on the unlocatable feeling.
So implicit.
It's an implicit facet.
That's right.
Well, thank you again so much. And we're going to put all of the links to where people can find you and listen to you. That sounded so creepy. It's like that commercial for the dating site, come find me.
That is so creepy.
I hate that. Okay, anyway. Everybody can find you online. And like you said, you're going to be putting out hopefully some weird stuff, but definitely some stuff every 4 to 6 weeks. Is that what you said on Spotify?
Gaither stuff.
The goal is 4 to 6 weeks. So covers and acoustic versions and vocal versions and remixes and all of the things. And then 2019, well, hopefully early-ish in the year, we'll have new stuff. The stuff we've been aiming at the whole time. So this EP and all this is a ramp up into what we were actually doing.
Awesome. And I know you've been playing a lot of shows, so we'll link to the tour schedule and all of that good stuff. So everybody check it out.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us again next week when we'll be doing scary things with a real live volcanologist, Dr. Janine Krippner. If you like what you've heard today, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review on iTunes. For show notes and more, check out doingscarythings.com.
So what are we talking about? I just blew it. Don't speak, please.